That's Ann Corcoran. She's the woman that briefed Gary and me and all the people in the Coalition of Concerned Citizens about 5 months ago. We've been following her website. We've been learning her association with Frank Gaffney and Jim Simpson, and that's why we're here today. So let's look at some of the information. It is a very expensive program. It costs over $1 billion every single year just to pick up and move human beings from one part of the world into America and distribute them out, and we're going to talk about how that works. We're talking just about refugees here. We're not talking about people that come here on their own. They're called asylum seekers. We're not talking about special visas. We're not talking about Cubans, Haitians. We're not talking about illegal. This is legal refugee program that's been around for 35 years. In addition to that, federal funding, federal welfare is immediately put on every single refugee, whether they need it or not. Many refugees who come from the Middle East are coming here specifically to drain our welfare system. Some of them need help, some of them do not need help. Whether they need help or not, they are officially given access to federal welfare that adds up to $6 billion a year. The chart on the right is really interesting. After 5 years of being in America, 74% of those refugees are still on food stamps. 56% are still getting Medicaid, etc. So the people are coming here not necessarily like our grandparents came to be free, they're coming here to be fed, and it's part of the program. In terms of state, we have no idea how much money we're spending in the state of Michigan or any other state. When the people drop them here for 3 months, they take care of them, they pull back and go get some more bodies to deliver, and then the state picks up the tab. Most states have no idea how much of their budget is being spent on this. It's a secret plan in the sense that it's a great example of central planning. You go all the way to the United Nations. They decide who's a refugee. The American State Department has, for 35 years, taken 1/2 of whoever the UN says is a refugee. And local people don't know them. So again, they're placed in your town or my town, and nobody in our town or in our state is aware of it or has any interaction with it. It has become dangerous, as both videos indicated, because we're no longer able to vet people. We're talking about failed states where people practice Sharia law, and we've acknowledged at the FBI level that we cannot vet those people, so it is dangerous. The UN to the State Department, and then it's very significant to get to know who are the 9 organizations that are contracted to take the $1 billion every year and spend it to move the bodies into neighborhoods. Gary, let's move on, okay? So, if we step back for a minute, this has been going on for 35 years, but in November of last year, it took on another complexion when the President of the United States, Obama, along with Valerie Jarrett, and the woman who had been the head of La Raza, announced the formation of the New American Task Force. So I guess that makes us old Americans. We're not really the focus. It's the new Americans that are putting us into the shadows. So this task force has every government agency on it, and it has the 9 contractors and their subcontractors. There's 350 subcontractors who move bodies. That community is taking the Task Force on New Americans, and the goal is to change America by changing its people. Let's move on, Gary. We'll come back to that. This is important. These are organizations. 6 of them have religious affiliations. They're in the UPS business. They pick up bodies, they move them across the ocean, they drop them into hub cities, they then go into ground transportation, they deliver them to a city within 50 or 100 miles of the hub, and they stay with them for a few months, connect them to local welfare, and then go back and get more bodies. In Michigan, the 2 big groups are the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. If you're a Catholic or a Lutheran, I'm a Catholic. We have this lady up here is a Lutheran. We're going to be very, very specific about what is done in the name. These organizations have the word Catholic and the word Lutheran on them. It's very significant to pick up what's really going on here. 97% of the funding for the Lutheran organization comes from the federal government, 98% of the Catholic organization comes from the federal government. This is not charity. This is not collection box, goodness of our heart, delivering money for missions. This is every taxpayer, no matter whether they have any religion or not, their money is being redistributed $1 billion per year into these agencies just to move bodies. In the state of Michigan, you can see these are the 6 of the 9, I guess 5 of the 9 that work in Michigan, and you can see the cities they work in. So the Catholic bishops have as a hub Lansing, Grand Rapids, and Clinton Township, out where Gary and I live. And Dearborn is primarily handled by the International Rescue Committee. Lutheran Services is #1 in all of Michigan. Again, they're processing the movement of human beings into America. It is an industry. It is an industry just like the cargo shipping industry. The Midwest is a tremendous target. You can see all the different places where these agencies, they probably have 150 subcontractors in those cities. They're called volunteer agencies, but of course they're not volunteer, they're for profit. In the new Jim Simpson book, I think Catholic charities, Catholic bishops, are receiving, it looks like, $551 million a year to move bodies.
2014. Yeah.
2014 that was, okay. And it's not charity, we said it's taxpayer money, it's not Christian. These organizations are prohibited by law forever speaking about the faith they represent with a single refugee. It's against the law. So this is being done in the name of changing people in America, changing America by changing people. This is social justice. This is liberation theology. That's the best you can say. The worst you can say is that it's a financial scam. There's something called secondary migration, so that even a refugee who's a Sunni that's delivered into Iowa or Oklahoma will probably find their way to Michigan, because Michigan is a magnet. Michigan and Minnesota are magnets for Somalis, and you'll see that in the detail. And of course, both Sunni and Shia, if they come into America, chances are they're going to make their way sooner or later to Dearborn. I want to make the point about this being an industry. At the top, you see something, you maybe can't read it. That's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is not a contractor. They're not in the official pipeline from the UN to the State Department to the voluntary organizations to your neighborhood, but they're very much a part of the industry because they want cheap labor. So in the name of cheap labor, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and many of the Republicans that they finance at election time are behind the program. These people make enough money, and the money that they retain, they get paid per head. So whether it's $5,000 to move a body, whatever it is, they retain anywhere from $1,000 or more money per head. You know, they have offices. The CEO of these companies typically make between $300,000 and $400,000. They have offices all over the country. They have enough money to hire lobbyists to promote more refugees. So these organizations have already gone on record supporting the goal of having 65,000 Syrian refugees come to America to be processed by the industry before the end of Obama's term. This year, we're taking 70,000 total. They are lobbying for 65,000 additional commitments, allotments to Syrian refugees. Remember what Syria is like. We're number 4,000 people in 2014, except we're really not number 4, because we have a much lower population than Texas, California, and New York, so we're number 1 if you look at per capita. So if you're trying to change America by changing its people, and Michigan is the most densely populated with refugee state, the people behind us are changing Michigan by changing its people. So Michigan has problems. Number 1, we're the most densely populated refugee destination. Number 2, we have the number 2 city in the country on the U.S. terror watch list. New York is number 1, but New York has 8 million people. We're number 2 with Dearborn, which has 96,000 people. So again, if you're looking at risk, if you're looking at the rate of changing the population of a state, Michigan is ground zero, and that's why we're here tonight, and that's why people are on the radio. We'll talk about that, and that's why we're going to recommend some petitions and some other activity that grassroots like you is what it's going to take to turn off the spigot. Thank you. So there are 7 hubs. Just like UPS has a hub in Memphis, they move packages from all over the world, they drop them into Memphis, and then they're redistributed. In Michigan, these are the hubs where these people have offices, and this is where the 4,000 bodies go through those 7 cities and then out into communities. In 2014, the 4,006 refugees came from all of those countries. Somebody is planning the detailed movement of people from Burma to Michigan. I didn't even know where Bhutan was. It's north of Burma. I looked it up today. Somalia, we have this is 1 year, 273 people from Somalia into Michigan in 1 year. Why? Iraq, 2751. So this is, many of those are Arabic-speaking countries with large Muslim populations. Many of them are countries that are at war with each other or with other countries, and that's the workload of those agencies into just Michigan. Yeah. So now we're going to move to 2015. 2015 is a fiscal year from the federal government. All the contracts start October 1st and go until September 30th. So we're in the final quarter of fiscal year 2015. From October to June, in the first 3 quarters, Michigan actually received and placed 2,025, if you can see it, refugees. I want you to notice, though, there's an awful lot of other states like Ohio and Minnesota that are also getting lots of refugees. So there's something going on to flood the urban and rural communities in the Midwest, many of which are conservative, with whole new communities that are not going to assimilate. Okay, here. So this is what we've learned. By the way, one of the people, we call ourselves pockets of resistance. You know, there's pockets of resistance right now in 24 states that are working with Jim Simpson and Ann Corcoran on this one topic. And one of them lives in Michigan, and she loves to stay up all night and go into the government database. You cannot find out any of the information I'm presenting tonight. You cannot find out ahead of time. It's a secret. You cannot find out who's coming to your town. We're looking at data and numbers, but not something, we don't know what's happening October 1st. There's a 2016 plan that's been built by the bishops and the Lutheran people, that's been sent to Lansing, that's been approved by the governor, that's going to Washington, and we cannot see it. I've asked for it specifically. We are not stakeholders. The public is not allowed to know the number. There are quarterly meetings of the stakeholders in this process. I've specifically asked about it, and I was told in writing, I have it on my email from Lutheran Services, that as a member of the public, I'm not entitled to be in the meetings or to understand the plan. So this is after the fact. So she did research after the fact, at the end of June 30th, went into the database and found that we have moved 22,000. We're going to move, our allocation for the year is 4,082. She's good at arithmetic, so she figured out there's 2,057 coming in now, just in July, August, and September. So Dearborn is getting this year, between October and the end of September, 640 more refugees. Grand Rapids is getting 740. Lansing is a big hub as well, and where we live in Troy, Michigan, is unbelievable. If you take Troy, Michigan, and Clinton Township, those 2 numbers together are almost 2,000 people coming just into our backyard. Okay, again, this is after the fact. Now, this is the power slide. We invite people who look at this presentation to realize what very, very few people know. None of the people in those towns know these numbers. The city council doesn't know the number, your congressional representative doesn't know the number, your state representatives don't know these numbers. So our researcher, who's part of the Pockets of Resistance, did the analysis. So, for example, Grand Rapids This is not just the hub. Grand Rapids now has 460, this is only for 9 months, 465 people from 27 other countries have a new mailing address in Grand Rapids. In addition to that, they're connected to welfare from the federal government and the state government, all the way down the list. So just to digress for a second, this week we had Jim Simpson, who is working with Ann Corcoran to coordinate the 24 places where we have pockets of resistance. He was on the radio in Muskegon, and he was able to identify for Grand Rapids, Battle Creek, Muskegon area, the detail of who's already been planted. So I live in Rochester Hills. I could look that up and see there's 5 people in my town that I don't know about, my mayor, my sheriff don't know about, and they're probably living at the end of the block where there's a Lutheran housing facility. Yeah. But that's after the fact, and I'm having to be a detective to figure that out. So we're near Ann Arbor and Dearborn right now. So Ann Arbor has 61 people who wake up in the morning and go to their mailbox and do whatever they do. They were in a foreign country, one of 27 a year ago. Now they live in Ann Arbor or Dearborn or Westland or right down the street from you. Again, this information is on a blog, which we have a handout for you. But if you go to your mayor or your legislator, they don't know anything about this. Why? Why was that done in secret? Right here. All of these people, and again, 70,000 nationally from last year, are on national federal assistance. This is the $6 billion a year number. So it's cash, it's Medicaid, it's food stamps, it's housing, etc. Medicaid expansion in Michigan made Michigan much more attractive to be a target. And remember, Medicaid was for poor people, single-family moms, single-family homes, and elderly. Medicaid expansion broadened that to a wide range of people, including refugees. And at the state level, we don't even know what we're talking about. Nobody in the state at this point has been able to, has responded to the question, do we have any numbers for health care, for schools, for criminal justice, and law enforcement? Incremental law enforcement is a big topic. Nobody can pin down any of this information. And again, your officials don't know what we're talking about. So don't be surprised if you're interested in this topic that they're going to basically blow you off because they don't understand it and they don't like to be embarrassed. So part of the education, part of the process of being a pocket is to educate people. Okay, now we get into the second part, and we're doing okay by time, I think, right?
12 minutes.
Okay. There's something else going on here. There's something called migration jihad, or the hijra, where people of the Muslim faith are encouraged to migrate for the purpose of infiltrating a new land for the purpose of growing adherence to Islam and the commitment to Sharia law. Gary? Okay. Senator Rick Santorum has identified this as a massive issue. At the rate we're going, we are basically changing America and growing the Muslim community for a number of reasons. And it is the federal government policy. This is happening not illegally. This is different than illegal immigration. There's no court, DACA. We don't have to go to court. As long as you are a refugee and you are picked up and brought into America as a refugee, you are immediately entitled. There's no court. There's no, are you going to stay? You're here, you're connected to welfare, and you're on a fast track to vote because you're going to become a citizen. It's very, very interesting. His point is, it is the policy of the federal government to do this. Gary, thank you. Daniel Greenfield's got a really interesting observation. If you study countries around the world where the population grows, remember now, we are not reproducing as a society in order to sustain ourselves. Europe stopped doing that about 10 or 15 years ago. So when you have Muslim reproduction systems functioning all over the place, you're growing at aggressive rates. At 5%, we're not saying we're at 5% today, but if you take a country that's at 5% penetrated with Muslim people, and then you look down to the ages below that, strikingly, if you look at the subcategory of people under 10 in a country that's got 5% Muslim population, people under 10 years old, 40% of the people in that country are Muslim. So the clock is ticking here for basically civilization jihad. Daniel Horowitz is a wonderful writer that we also have been able to Skype in our meetings. And his article is about suicidal immigration. That's what we're doing. We're committing suicide with our immigration policy. And recently he cited a poll that had two really important topics. One of them is that 51% of the Muslims who live in the United States of America believe they should have the option in the United States of America of living under Sharia law. That's a devastating poll. 29% of the men under 45 years old believe that it's okay to use violence to promote Sharia as the law of the land in America. And Daniel asked the questions, he was commented, we should never be admitting entire classes of people who don't like us, who want to change our whole way of living, particularly when the world is at war. Thank you. Okay, this is really interesting. You may have seen it, but you probably didn't. A week ago, 3 people went to shop in IKEA. We have an IKEA nearby here. 3 people went to shop in IKEA. Unfortunately, they went past the department that sells knives. A person from Eritrea, the Muslim community, in a jihad activity, picked up the knife, cut the head of the woman, and killed 2 people. This is in an IKEA store. This is not even our soldiers that were killed in Chattanooga. This is just an average person in the act of shopping. This is in the country of Sweden. The Swedish government reacted by immediately going to the facilities where Muslims live and protecting them, because they wanted to protect, right after this, protect the Muslim community from the dark forces of society. That would be you and me. In addition to that, IKEA's decision was to remove the knives from the shelves for a period of time. So there's a strange mentality here, and again, this is the act of shopping. The tragedy in Chattanooga is another example of the suicidal immigration policy that Daniel Horowitz talks about. We had 5 brave servicemen killed by a person who was brought in, immigrated to the United States, and basically attacked them as part of his Sharia jihad commitment. And of course, we had a gentleman, there's many, many examples from Idaho that was involved in terror-related activities. By the way, today I read the Sanaya family, the Boston bombers, they received over $100,000 in welfare payments. So people are coming here to be fed, not to be free, and we, by government policy, are providing a magnet to basically redistribute wealth. That's what the wealth system is. We're redistributing wealth with worldwide migration to come and get our welfare. Gary, we're gonna look for a break point. All right, just want to comment. So this is brand new. We just got to meet Ann Corcoran 5 months ago. Jim Simpson just came on board as the coordinator of people who follow Ann in terms of action. They call it pockets of resistance. I mean, we're talking about core groups of people just getting started, like me and Gary and a few other people. But 24 states have signed up, and we're going to hand out a piece of paper, have signed up with the Center for Security Policy as people who want to be active in this mission. In the state of Virginia, they couldn't find out anything about the actual cost, so they spent $200 to get 1,200 pages from a Freedom of Information Act deliverable from the state government, just to find out what are the plans, what have been the plans, how many people have the Catholic bishops moved into Arlington, Virginia, or Richmond, Virginia, what is their plans, and how much money has the state. We're still processing those papers, they are, but that's how difficult it is to find out who's coming to town. In Michigan, we're just getting started. Again, we're number 1 in the risk because of our population, the dilution of our population, and we also have a high risk in terms of potential terrorism. We are in the process, hopefully by next week, we're going to be having 2 petitions, one to support the Babin bill and one to support an idea we're going to introduce in a second. We've also got blank letters that you can sign to your delegates, your congressional delegates. We've got them here. If you're interested tonight, you can read the letters, you can sign them. You can mail them, the address is there. If you want to leave them with us, we'll mail them. Believe me, from a cost perspective, this is an issue there's a bunch of people in America that are mad as hell and aren't going to take it anymore. They show up at Donald Trump rallies. Donald Trump is talking about this. So there certainly are going to be people who are worried about employment, worried about keeping wages down, who may not be your Republican colleagues. So when you talk about this, you can talk about the cost, you can talk about the secrecy, you can talk about the Islamic terror, you can talk about it in different ways. There's actual movement. So the president knows you might be a pocket of resistance. So he, as part of the task force on New Americans, and even before that, there's an organization called Welcoming America, whose job it is to come into cities like yours and mine and talk about why it's important to have the refugees, how important it is for the refugees to come here and crank up the economy and start businesses, etc., and the whole humanitarian fallacy. It's called Welcoming America. Welcoming in Michigan is extremely active. Where we live, there's a meeting on September 16th. Welcoming Michigan is going to be there with a whole-day seminar with mayors and school people promoting refugee resettlement. So this is the other side. They think we're the enemy, and we're just getting started resistance. Okay, we're going to find a break point.
This is Ann. You want to stop here, Dave?
Let's stop right